Hi everyone. My name is Tara All, if you don't already know me, and I am here to share some of my thoughts and I guess intuitive insights around 2025 coming into this new year astrologically and a little bit numerologically. So I'm going to start there. 2025 is a 9 year. Anyone who doesn't know how that works, we take 2025 and we take the 2 plus the 0 plus the 2 plus the 5, and that gives us a 9. And 9, and I want to first credit, there is my favorite book on numerology is called Numerology, Spiritual Light Vibrations, and it's by Jeanne Morris. So I want to credit a number of the ideas and things I'll share here briefly come from her book. And in the 9 year, Jeanne says that 9 symbolizes the spirit energy fully conscious. So wisdom attained and the completion. The end of a cycle of spirit becoming fully conscious through experience in matter. Now, the 9 in the tarot is the Hermit. And the Hermit, oftentimes we immediately think, oh, completely withdrawing, right? Stepping back from sort of the rat race of daily life. It is true. There's a part of this with the Hermit card, the turning in to align with our inner wisdom, to really feel into what is building inside of us or what is coming into our consciousness. But the Hermit doesn't just stay tucked away. The Hermit comes out to share that wisdom. And so I've heard a number of people talking about the Hermit year, the 9 year, in the sense of it being kind of tucked away. And I want to say that my take on this is that it is about stepping back to the extent you need to feel into what is actually ready for you to take out. Because the 9 year is about universal love, and it's about humanitarian things, and it's about helping, and it's about regenerating and restoring. It's about forgiveness. And those things don't just happen tucked away in our little sanctuary. Those things happen when we actually reach out and live into the interconnectivity we have with each other. So one of the things that's making me think about as I was feeling into this and reading Jeanne's book around the 9 is when I was studying esoteric astrology with Alan Oken, which I have some little notes in my little notebook that I turn to quite frequently, even more so these days than I did in the past. And he's no longer with us, so it's kind of extra precious to me that I got to spend that time. Granted, it was online, but it was live with him. And he would talk about making the impersonal or the universal more personal and making the personal more impersonal, right? So that my personal struggles, they're still valid, right? My personal needs, they're still important. But maybe take those things a little less personally, especially this year. And to think about the collective things that people are going through, that sometimes it's easy to step back and say, oh, that's not happening on my front step, or, that's not in my neighborhood. But to really think about that anything that's happening anywhere, it is personal because we are interconnected. And this is part of this 9 energy. Now, Jeanne talks about with the 9, our passion becomes compassion, which I thought was very beautiful. How does my passion become compassion? And this idea of with feeling, but feeling that is connected with, something greater, feeling that motivates me to do things or to think or to feel or to develop practices that are helpful and healing for others. One thing was really cool that Jeanne talks about with the 9 is that 9s, and so in the tarot, right, in the minor arcana or the pip cards, we sometimes call them, the top of that is a 10. But for me, the 9 is really where the completion's happening or the culmination's happening. By the time we get to a 10, it's already sort of really hit the top and it's kind of already turning into the new beginning. So Jeanne talks about that with the 9, we see all the vibrations from 1 through 9. So everything that comes before the 9 sort of folds up all together. So there's a culmination and also an activation of the energy, which I think is a beautiful. So in the 9, somehow it all works together in a way that it couldn't before. And she does talk too about the 9 being universal love, impersonal view of life as one, similar to what I was mentioning before. She says the 9 completes and unfolds the ending of a cycle from 1 to 9. So what is 1? 1 is the beginning. 2 is the choice. 3 is the creative principle. 4 is form and structure. 5, freedom and change. 6, service. 7, spiritual perfection. 8, authority and power. 9, compassion and universal love. So all these things wrapping together to this year. Somehow we've reached a point in a cycle where we're being called to look to the betterment of everyone, right? The individuals matter, but we need to think about the larger interconnected family that we all are. So some other words around the 9 year can be protection, right? Protective of others, and not just our personal, like family and close ones, but of anyone in need of protection. Inner wisdom, generosity, selflessness, strength of character, intuition, big vision, and abstract thoughts, right? This is where we start to see, oh, there's a bigger picture. Here's how it's all interconnected. Higher laws, being the light of the world, being responsive to light. There's a creative element here, and creativity in particular that comes through art and culture that really brings archetypes or the unconscious into consciousness, or unites us in these ways that underneath we're all the same regardless of where we come from. Because ultimately we all come from the same place at the root. Now, also this idea of rebuilding and reconstruction. So in the 9, Jeanne also says we go through personal challenges. There can be sorrow, there can be disappointment, there can be, difficulties. There can be times where we realize that, things are tough, and sometimes we're tired and we don't know what to do. But she says we go through those challenges until we realize the divine principle is impersonal. And then we learn to teach and to give without taking on others' responsibilities. So, what does that mean? I mean, for many of us, we're figuring that out, What does it actually mean to help or to teach or to heal without really stepping in and taking over what someone else needs to discover for themselves? How do we come alongside and help without trying to take control, right, or step in? It's not an easy balance. Some other notes I have here is that 9 represents, and I think this comes from Jeanne. Sometimes when I write my notes, it's like, what was me and what was Jeanne? So this is why I want to give her big credit here. But 9 represents our last earthly lesson, which is forgiveness. And I am a student of A Course in Miracles, and I've been talking with my close friends and colleagues lately about forgiveness, and we've been exploring how, at least how we're feeling into it, is that forgiveness is not something I need to personally do. It's already here. A part of me already does it or is it. It's the same with love, right? A part of me already loves me. A part of me already is in that space of love. So it's less of something we have to do, love and forgiveness, and more of something to lean into, right? Or to accept. It's like, it's there. I don't have to make it happen. I just have to allow it and be in it. And I think that's a beautiful way of looking at it. So this idea of the harmony of being one people, of being one love, of being one humanhood, right? That's the calling of a 9. So into the astrology, and there are a lot of transits. So I don't know if you can see this very well, but like there's these and then there's these. So there is no way that we have time to go, well, I'm just not going to spend the time to go through all of them. I want to hit on the things that I feel like are most on my heart or on my mind, and that may also be useful to you. So currently, and as I'm recording this, it is Saturday, January 18th, 2025, and Mars in the sky has been retrograde since early December and will continue its retrograde motion, at least from our view. It looks retrograde to us. It's not really moving backwards until February 23rd of this year. And Mars turns retrograde about once every 26 months, so it doesn't happen every year. When it comes up, we really, it gets our attention, meaning, what are we reconsidering? Because retrogrades are about reconsidering, rethinking, repairing, revamping, restructuring, recontextualizing. And so Mars is about energy and desire, right? What am I going after? What am I pursuing? What do I want? What is considered a win? Mars oftentimes shows what we try to defend, right? Or what we think we need to fight off. And so while it's retrograde, we're reconsidering all those things. Do I really want this stuff I thought I wanted in the past? What is my authentic desire now? What is worth my energy? What is worth my time? What is worth standing strong for? And what is kind of time to let go? Now, in the sign Cancer, Mars retrograde in Cancer. Now, Mars began its retrograde in Leo, but it has been now retrograde in Cancer for a bit, and it's still retrograde in Cancer and will be there again until February 23rd. So what's Cancer about? Cancer's about what really nurtures my heart and soul. What really feeds me? What really makes me feel at home inside and out? What does it mean to care? What does it mean to have empathy? What does family mean? Who is my family? And who do I want to be my family? So this, again, that we're in this period of really rethinking, what do I want? What really nurtures me? What's worth my time and energy? And there may be some things where, again, we make a little adjustment. Sometimes we think we've been going after something like, I'm 50 years old now, which is an interesting period in life. I could go on for a long time about the interesting things that happen to a woman's body hormonally at this time, at least to mine. And so with Mars retrograde for me, I've really been thinking, what's worth pushing for? And is even that pace or that way that I sort of move forward with my energy, is that serving me now? So these are things you might think about. Mars retrograde, sometimes we can feel tired. Sometimes we even feel sick. Energy can kind of feel drained, but that's because we're trying to feel into what hasn't been working. So sometimes we have to be forced to slow down to get in touch with what actually matters. What do I really want? Right? And what's worth going after? And what actually is a win? Right? Mars loves to win, but what does it mean to win? So there could be a new way of looking at this. On January 11th, the lunar nodes, the north and south node, changed signs. They had been in Aries and Libra for about 18 months. And now, January 11th, the north node moved into Pisces and south node moved into Virgo. And they will be there until July 26th, 2026. Now, the nodes really speak to our collective intentions for evolutionary growth. And the north node, in many ways, is the direction we're being called to lean into more. And the south node is energy from the past, that it's not about letting go of it, but it's about releasing anything that's become distorted or that we've been overdoing so that we can find some better balance between the two. Now, the nodes always, they move retrograde. So instead of moving forward through the signs, there's a backward motion, which is why you see the north node moving from Aries into Pisces. And I think one of the things that's interesting about this is that during these next 18 months, approximately, we are really being asked to lean into this Pisces energy. And Pisces is about spirituality, connection with something greater. It is compassion, it's unity. It's also imagination. And there's a certain level of bigger vision, right? Of being what's helpful, what's healing. Pisces is about recovery and respite and finding our sanctuary. But on the other side, Pisces can bring out false illusions and over idealistic sort of romantic notions of what things are going to be. So this is sort of restructuring. It's interesting because with the South Node in Virgo, which has to do a lot with making things better, right? Fixing things, sometimes overanalyzing to get them just right. But it's the earthy elements with Virgo. It's the beauty in moving into different layers of perfection. Not that something's ever going to be perfect, but it's making it a little bit better. So we have that Virgo, very earthy energy, and then we have this Pisces, very ethereal, more spirit, much less connected with the body, and more opening to sort of the intangible and timelessness. So how do we sort of find that interaction, that place between the physical things and the body? And how do we know when to step up and work to make something better? And when do we let go and accept things as they are? So that interplay is coming in here. But I feel very, very strongly that, over the past 18 months before this change happened and the North Node was in Aries, there was something about really leaning into our own individual personal power, right? What does it mean to be an independent person? What do I actually need as a separate self? Almost like reconnecting with our sense of identity. And if we've done that in a healthy way, which, I mean, I don't know, can we ever really do that? I feel like it's always part of our evolution. But the more we've been able to come to a new sense of, this is me, this is what I'm meant to do, this is really what I want, this is how I can support myself and act on my own behalf and be an advocate for myself. With the North Node now moving into Pisces, now we think, how can I take that sense of self and look at it as really part of something greater? And how can I step out and be useful to help all of us, to help nature, right? To help the environment, to help on a bigger level. So now it's interesting to think about this, right? Pisces doesn't think in terms of me and you. You are me and I am you. So how do we hold the sense of self and the sense of interconnectivity at the same time? I think even reconsidering what is helpful, what is healing is important here. And I think leaning into less linear things, right? Maybe this is more art. Maybe this is more music. Maybe this is more just holding space and being together. This is not necessarily trying to sit down and let me solve your problem sort of intellectually. How can I be with you and feel with you? And what are the things we can do to sort of inspire and bring comfort in a very experiential way, not just an intellectual way? Now, the other thing, I mean, there's a number of things here, but coming up pretty quickly here, on February 6th, I'm in Pacific time zone, but this will be early on the 7th if you're in the Eastern time zone of February, Neptune in the sky will be conjunct the North Node, right? And so both in the sign of Pisces, and Neptune is the modern ruler of Pisces. So this forward movement in our intention for collective evolutionary growth, this Neptune energy is really pulling out more again of this compassion, of this dissolving false illusions around our sense of separateness. And we can disagree. We do not have to agree. We do not have to like each other. There's a big difference between liking someone and loving someone, right? I sometimes say, and one of my teachers used to say, you don't have to like it, you just have to love it. And so that's part of what we're leaning into. What does it actually mean to love? Now, Neptune and the North Node come together about every 18 years, right? So we don't get this very often. So this really leaning into either a greater sense of connection. So whether that is nature, whether that is energy, whether that is a God consciousness, whether that is spirit, whether that is goddess, but there is something greater we're being asked to see. And in many ways, whatever Neptune touches, and I know Stephen Forrest often talks about Neptune is wherever it is or whatever it's doing, it's inviting us into a new level of consciousness. So in some way, we're able to see this from a new perspective. What can bring help and healing? What does it actually mean to love? Sometimes our old ideas of what that looks like, it's like this whole sort of facade dissolves or crumbles or melts. Neptune, sometimes it's like things are literally disintegrating in front of us. And that can feel scary because, well, where am I, or who am I, or what's happening? But then Neptune always invites us to be in the now, right? It's not about the past. It's not about the future. It's about the now. What can we do now? So that happens. Then on February 23rd, as I mentioned before, Mars turns direct. And so in some ways, then, you might find your energy gets going a little bit more. You get reinvigorated about, yeah, I'm actually ready to do something. So that can happen in here. On March 1st, Venus turns retrograde. And Venus will be retrograde until April 12th. So when Venus turns retrograde, this is where we are reconsidering, reclaiming, repairing, reconnecting with relationships and how we do relationships, what reciprocity means to us, what it means to be on a certain level of equal or egalitarian relationships. This is also reclaiming or reconsidering or redefining what we like, right? Venus is in mythology the goddess of love and beauty and art. So what things are aesthetically pleasing to me? What makes me feel good? Reclaiming my right to receive pleasure and receptivity as a whole. But Venus, this idea of re-looking at what it means to be in relationship. And I always say with Venus, it's not just like, me and my husband out there or me and my friends. It also is my relationship with life. I sometimes say when I get up in the morning, do I feel like I'm co-creating with life? Do I feel like I'm fighting off life? I'm just getting through life? So in some ways, this has us, kind of re-examine this energy. And yeah, so Venus, when it turns retrograde, will be in the sign Aries, but it will move March 27th back to Pisces. So this whole Venus retrograde, while it's in Aries, can really be reclaiming, what do I really want, and a certain level of independence around things. But when it moves back to Pisces, then there's this feeling of interconnectivity. So even the balance between the two, right? I'm a separate self with an ego, which I need to exist in this life. Ego is not a bad thing. Certain level of narcissism, we all need to have it. It gets very demonized these days. We need it, right? But too much of those things, then we lose contact or connection with a deeper sense of self, or a capital S self, or an interconnected energy, right? Collective energy. So there's something in sort of reclaiming all these things this year, specifically in March and then until April 12th. Yeah. Now, sometimes I think too with Venus retrograde, there can be redefining. It's funny, Mars is retrograde now, and then Venus is turning retrograde, right? So the two of them together, the cosmic lovers, reclaiming sort of what it means to love. It could be even, reclaiming, redefining romance, or what it means to have a heart connection. Another way to think about this thing. Now, without spending a lot of time here, this will lead us into the first eclipse season of 2025. So on March 14th, or very, very late on the 13th, if you're Pacific time, there will be a full moon total lunar eclipse in Virgo. Eclipse seasons oftentimes reveal things that were hidden before. There will also be a new moon partial solar eclipse on March 29th in Aries. So during that eclipse season time, right? If you can spend the time to reflect, to kind of feel into what might be coming into your awareness, what energy might be coming in that you haven't noticed before. Eclipses are like the light switching off and on. It's like our normal existence is going on here, and then all of a sudden it's like, whoa, it's dark, but when the lights turn back on, what can I see that I didn't see before? And with the full moon total lunar eclipse in Virgo on March 14th, this can be reaching a level of awareness or illumination around Virgo things, which can be around work, can be health and healing, what it means to be of service. So you might have this moment, where you're like, whoa, I was putting all my effort into working on XYZ. And then we have this wake up moment where we're like, I think that cycle's over. I don't think I want to work that way or work so hard at those things. Because Virgo's about always figuring out the discernment of what's really helping and what's not helping. So, this can help us let go of the over obsessing or the workaholic kind of syndromes around things, so that we can really take that energy and channel it into something that actually helps. I ask myself oftentimes, in any moment, is what I'm doing helpful? Is it really helpful? And sometimes that helps me course correct. Now, With the new moon partial solar eclipse on March 29th, new moons are about brand new beginnings. So where the full moons, there's a certain level of culmination. But I'm going to say this, full moons are not an ending because full moon's only halfway through the cycle. It's a peak or fruition. You still have half the cycle to go through, like the wind down or the waning period. But new moon is the brand new start of the cycle. So in Aries on March 29th, this particular eclipse can be this initiating or setting new intentions around who I really want to be in the world. How do I want to step out? What does it mean for me to be independent? What do I actually want to go after? What does it mean to be a leader? What kind of leader do you want to be? What kind of leader do I want to be? And I don't just mean people leading, companies or big groups, but what does it mean to be in the lead of my life? What does it mean? Who do I feel that I am? There may be a new beginning of, this sort of new sense of myself is coming forward. Now, in between these two eclipses in March, on March 15th, Mercury turns retrograde. And this year, Mercury will turn retrograde in fire signs. And on Mercury retrograde, which typically happens about 3 times a year, this is the one, of course, we talk about this a lot, right? The computer's going sideways and communication's not working out and the train didn't come to pick me up or there's no Lyft driver where I need to go. So all these sort of signals can kind of cross. But Mercury retrograde, it's sort of like we step back from the normal way that things connect so that we can reconnect with a different way of either coordinating, thinking, communicating, doing our day-to-day stuff. So from March 15th until April 7th, Mercury will be retrograde. Part of that will be in Aries. Part of it will be in Pisces. So just be aware at that time that, there may be some real rethinking, especially in Aries. What am I actually doing? Mercury retrograde in fire signs for 2025. One of the key words for all the fire signs, Aries and Leo and Sagittarius, is identity. Right? In Aries, we discover who we are by simply spontaneously, instinctually trying things, right? I got to go for it to see if I like it. It's like if it's a child, I need to touch it myself. I need to have my own experience. We say sometimes even like, I got to touch the stove to know if it's hot, right? As an example. In Leo, we really sort of discover how can I bring value, meaning, and purpose to who I am. And so we're taking that sense of identity and we're trying to express ourselves and put ourselves out there so that we get a response to see that, this works. People like this. People love this. So it's like that really sort of like, I'm going to take this me and I'm going to do something with it and I'm going to show that it's worth something. And in Sagittarius, we then see how far can I take myself, right? So we may take a big risk, take a big leap. What more can I do? How can I understand myself in a bigger framework? So keeping that in mind, all of that is a bit under repair, reconstruction, rethinking, renovation, whatever words, RE words you like that are coming up around Mercury retrograde. So that takes us to March 30th. And then we have a big move on March 30th. March 30th, Neptune moves into Aries. Now, Neptune moves slowly, right? 165 years to go around the zodiac. So it spends, a good chunk of time in each sign. So I should do the math real quick. Let me see. I'm not good at sometimes remembering, okay, how many years exactly does that mean on approximate it spends in a sign? So let's see, this would be Neptune spends about 13 and a half years in each sign. So prior to March 30th and currently as I'm speaking, Neptune has been in Pisces. When it moves to Aries, especially Aries being the first sign of the zodiac, it is initiating an entire big 165-year cycle. And because Neptune has to do in some level with our spirituality, with our faith, right? With our interconnectivity, with imagination, with the way that our humanness mixes with our spirit nature. And so if Neptune invites us into a new level of consciousness, this is a big new shift, a whole new big 165-year cycle. And if Neptune is about dissolving false illusions, and if Aries is about my sense of self and my independence and who I think I am and who I think I want, then there is something about dissolving false illusions around that. So I can have a more whole sense of self that is included in everything else. So I think we may find with this transit that the whole idea of leadership and who we want to lead, our countries, who we want to lead our groups, who we want to be our teachers, who we want to be follow as the pioneers. There will be a shifting around that energy and around energy as a whole. Now, so Neptune enters Aries on March 30th. It will retrograde back into Pisces on October 22nd. So there's still a dip back into the Pisces zone, right? So again, this is sort of a little bit like back and forth. And so again, while Neptune has been in Pisces like it still is now, and when it dips back on October 22nd, it's sort of going back. Wait a second. Neptune in Pisces, did we reach this new level of unity? Did we reach this new level of spiritual connection? Did we reach a new way of holding compassion and understanding and forgiveness in this sense that we are all part of each other? Because that's important before we reach this whole new cycle of now, how do I step out as an individual? Because if I'm too bound in my old, this is what I want, this is what I need, this is about me, right? This is about my power, then things are going to be very likely to go more and more sideways. So I feel like while Neptune is in Pisces, we're meant to reconnect with the love, whatever that means for each of us. So that when we then step into this new journey of developing a whole separate sense, what does it mean to be a self in the multiverse, right? Or certainly on our planet, that we have that love and connection bringing with us. So then the next big move I want to talk about, and again, I'm not covering every single important transit, so please know there's more. There's always more, but just don't want this to go on forever. On May 24th, Saturn enters Aries. So Saturn and Neptune, right? They've been hanging out together in Pisces. And Saturn spends about 29 and a half years to go around the zodiac. So it spends about 2.5 years in each sign. So this is another big move, right? And so while Saturn has been in Pisces, like it still is right now, it's asking us to reconsider, redefine, take responsibility for our interconnectivity, for how we love and care for each other, for seeing the universal truth, right? Not just separately what's true for me, but what is true for everything and everyone. So again, May 24th, Saturn enters Aries. It will turn retrograde and move back into Pisces September 1st. So again, there's this sort of motion of, we're going back a little bit into the old cycle, right? Before we can fully start the new one. And that going back into the old cycle for any of us can be completing unfinished business, right? Am I spiritually aligned? Am I spiritually attuned? Have I reached a new place of compassion or understanding or forgiveness? Am I finding ways, in my life to be inspired and to let my imagination and my vision open up into something greater, something beyond what I've known before? And also, because Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac, there's a bit of closure, right? What collectively that's been going on for, I would say, a long time, are you ready to let go of, to bring meaningful closure? And when we're bringing meaningful closure to something, we need to really honor it, right? See it for what it was. Thank it, have gratitude for the things that it brought us, but then recognize that letting it go and surrendering into the new thing is what's ready to happen. That's really what this is calling us to do. But if we start a new beginning, bringing in too much trash or toxicity or old, old patterns, old ways of doing things that just aren't going to help the new cycle, it's important to be, right. There's still 3 more things I don't want to bring into this new phase of my life. I'm imagining like my husband and I are very excited at some point soon to move to a new place. So when I move to a new place, there's going to be a lot of stuff we're going to want to purge, right? So anytime you make a move into something new, what is the old stuff you don't want? You don't want it to come into the new cycle or in where the new energy is. So in some ways, you guys, we're in a compost pile. And when you're in a compost pile, some of that stuff is just rotten and just needs to be let go. But also in a compost pile, it feeds the next cycle. So what things do you want to keep that actually prepare the seed for what's coming? And what things are just going to make it difficult for the new seed to grow? And that kind of summarizes some of this energy here. Then, as you can see, right, the end of March and then May and then June are big moving and shaking energy times. June 9th, Jupiter moves into the sign Cancer. It's been in Gemini, and Jupiter takes 12 years to go around the zodiac, so approximately 1 year in each sign. And wherever Jupiter is, it's where we need to expand, where there's potential for growth, new opportunities. It's like in the tarot, Jupiter is a wheel of fortune. So this is basically saying when it comes to Cancer stuff, which is empathy, which is care, which is home, which is family, which is nurturing, inner emotional world, right? We in so many ways have been focused on external things. Am I getting my work done, right? Am I doing my job well? Are people respecting my work outwardly? And even sometimes when we get sick, right? Or we get very tired, we still push because I have to like meet that standard or external expectation. Jupiter in Cancer is honoring the inner world. And I think about this, so many of us, at least no one that comes to see me in my practice or in my life, was truly, when they were young, their inner world wasn't really honored, not to the level of how they perform externally, right? I mean, I don't know, maybe you're different, like maybe you were raised differently, but for me, there wasn't someone like my parents, and my parents, in many ways were wonderful, but they weren't coming alongside and saying, how are you doing on the inside, right? How do you really feel on the inside, right? What's going on in you, sort of in those spaces? But Cancer's about that. It's about expanding that emotional parts and all the parts and what they need. So what does it really mean to feed and to love and to create community and family in a generous, open-hearted way? And so I think right now, while Jupiter is in Gemini and has been in Gemini, it's new ways of thinking, new ways to communicate, right? New ways of looking at our mindset. But as it moves to Cancer, there really is this, where's this emotional intelligence and what more can we do with that feeling space? Cancer also has a lot to do with care. So again, sometimes this is not me solving your problem. It's me sitting next to you, or me being, with you, if it has to be virtual, right? We're going to be in that space, and I can be comfortable to be with you when you feel what you feel without having to try to like label it. Although sometimes that can be helpful, but sometimes we just want to be felt. Sometimes we don't want a solution. We just want to know that someone cares, and that they, that they may have had a similar experience of feeling something the same. So Jupiter will be in Cancer from June 9th, 2025 until June 29th, 2026. And I just feel like, because Jupiter has so much to do with oftentimes like the generosity or abundance, or the way that we sort of see the bigger picture for our communities, and Cancer having to do with family. So there's something to me that has to do with the Jupiter, the more social aspects, with the personal Cancer aspects, and bringing those together, which leads me back to making the impersonal more personal. Now, there are a number of different things still going on after this. It feels like it's already enough, right? But there's more. On June 15th and on August 19th, and let me say this in a better way. This is actually the third hit of Jupiter square Saturn on June 15th. The first one was August 19th, 2024, and the second time was December 24th, 2024. Jupiter-Saturn squares, they happen about every 10 years, and then they happen over about 10 months. So Jupiter square Saturn is interesting because Jupiter wants to expand, right? It wants growth. It wants us to see more and do more and be more. But Saturn wants us to make sure that it's practical. We can actually make it happen, right? Saturn doesn't want us to bite off more than we can chew. And so there's this interplay between the two, of the challenge of What does it mean to have growth that's actually sustainable? And I think in some ways, this is a combination of moving towards the future without throwing out everything from the past, right? How do those two things come together? What does it really mean to evolve our society? Both Jupiter and Saturn are what we call social planets. They bridge kind of the personal and the impersonal. So when they come together, they're like, oh, there's got to be a different way to do this. There's got to be a different way to work together, to build things, to really look at what community is, what really is the foundation that we need so that everyone feels taken care of, but at the same time, that real progress can happen. So oftentimes real shifts, whether it's business-wise, whether it's socially, whether it's economically, we can see with squares there's a challenge. And we can even see it like I'm in Los Angeles. So from the United States point of view, in some ways, right, there are some people in this country that want to very much move forward in a progressive way. And then there are other people that very much want to go back to kind of an older way that feels more safe and secure. You can feel the challenge, right, between the two of those. So the key is, how do those things work together in us and then collectively? New ways of discovering wisdom, right? Both Jupiter and Saturn have to do with wisdom. They just tend to go about it in different ways. Saturn, again, is a little more reticent. It's a little slower, right? And then Jupiter is a little faster, wants to expand and open up. But together, there can be big ideas that can actually land. Now, I'm going to skip a couple things here, but July 7th, Uranus moves into Gemini. So Uranus it takes 84 years to go around the zodiac. So it spends approximately 7 years in each sign. I'm going to double check my math, although I feel like I shouldn't need to, but let's do it anyway. Yep, right about 7 years in each sign. And so it has been in Taurus for a long time. And wherever Uranus is, it's about liberation. It's about breaking free. It's about needing to be and live in a more authentic way of energy that works for where we are now. Uranus breaks down the conditioning of the past, the things that have become stuck, the things that don't work, the things that we thought were stable and kept us safe. Uranus sort of, it can oftentimes show up as either tearing them apart or dumping them upside down, so that we need to find a new way to do it. So it's interesting that while Uranus has been in Taurus, we've had a lot of things going on with the environment, right? We've had fires and hurricanes and extreme, weather situations going on. So that's just one way we can think about that energy coming forward. But as Uranus moves to Gemini, like it will do on July 7th, however, just like Saturn and Neptune, when it turns retrograde, it will move back into Taurus for cleaning up some old business. And that will happen on November 7th. So again, we're kind of on this like precipice of changing energies in a number of ways. And when energies are changing, we can feel very disoriented in general, I just want to say. Physically, energetically, psychically, mentally. Sometimes we just feel like we don't even know where we are, because it's like we have one foot in an old way of doing things, or of experiencing things, or just of the overall nature of life. And then we don't quite know where the new foot's going to go yet. But when Uranus moves to Gemini, imagine this. Gemini has to do with learning and teaching and information. To a certain level, technology, all kinds of connections. And Uranus is very connected with future thinking and innovation. So this could really be opening us up to a whole new sort of stage. I mean, AI could be increasing, all kinds of technologies, things around medicine, all the ways that we kind of use information, get information, what's available in that mental social realm we could have some very surprising things happening. We can become very awakened in different ways. Now, whether we like those or not, that's a different matter. But I think that information and how we connect with each other and the way that we make sense of things is going to be shifting. We need to think in new ways. So that's a big one. The second Mercury retrograde will be July 17th or 18th, depending on where you are by time zone. And that will be in Leo for the entire time, retrograde from that July 17th or 18th until August 11th. So again, Mercury, right, is a time to, rethink and reconnect with sort of what's the story I tell myself every day? What do I say that things mean? What do I think I'm actually doing? What do I think is actually happening? And in Leo, this can be reconsidering or rethinking, again, what I'm really passionate about. But also with Leo, reconsidering, because it's a fixed sign, Leo, reconsidering what are my attachments to who I think I'm supposed to be, and what actually gets me attention, or what makes me feel like people love me and like me. There's something about reconnecting with that energy around, am I really expressing myself in an authentic way? Is just me coming from the heart, or am I just trying to say and do the things that make you like me? Right? Now I have a moon in Leo and Mars in Leo, so I'm very familiar with this kind of energy in my own life of sometimes I have to think, right? Am I just trying to get you to, yay, Tara, that's so great what you did? Or am I really, really coming from an inspired place where there's just something I have to share? And if that's the case, just letting it go, just putting it out there, that's what it's all about. So this rethinking, am I coming from the heart? Is my heart open? And sometimes with Leo, it's interesting too, because we think we need to be seen a certain way, even physically, right? And so if somebody gives us feedback that we can see that they are seeing us in a way we don't like, then we somehow want to change that. But there's a beauty in letting people see us how they see us and letting ourselves just be what we are. So yes, there's that. Now, let's see. Again, I'm not gonna touch on everything. I'm kind of trusting my intuition of what to skip over here. But the second eclipse season of 2025, on September 7th, we have a full moon total lunar eclipse in Pisces. Yeah. So this eclipse season it's for this year in whole. We're looking at the Virgo Pisces eclipse season. But again, on March 29th, we dip back into Aries for one of them. So eclipses happen when the sun and moon, when the full and the new moon are relatively close to the lunar nodes. And so with this changing of lunar nodes, there's a little bit of crossover between them. So on September 7th, this full moon total lunar eclipse in Pisces, right? Again, full moons are this point of fruition or culmination, but full moons are also about illumination and integration. Like sometimes we get this flash, all of a sudden we see something for the first time, right? And we're able to see it in its wholeness. That's a full moon thing, right? We can see the full moon at this time. And so in Pisces, this can be something culminating or new awareness again around the Pisces things, right? Around our bigger vision, around compassion, around what we're ready to let go, what we're ready to accept, how we're able to love. Maybe this is really stirring up your creative artistic talents, right? Anybody who's into anything in the arts or creatives, this can be a wonderful time to do it. But one little note, during eclipses in general, it's good to not push too hard if you're a person who likes to work with moon magic, like doing particular rituals or setting intentions. When there's an eclipse, it's good to step back and give a little time after the eclipse, because the energy is so, it's almost like putting your finger in a light socket during an eclipse. So we need a little time to sort of register the energy and then to let it integrate. One of the recommendations during eclipses in general is get in the bathtub, get close to the water, because it helps to sort of absorb a little bit or soften that current. Again, eclipses they shake things up, right? They're about changes, and sometimes it's about seeing things that you've been putting off, or you've not been aware of, or you've not wanted to know, or you've not wanted to accept, and eclipses bring it into your consciousness. Then on the 21st of September, there's a new moon partial solar eclipse in Virgo. So once the eclipse, happens and you give a little time, this can be setting new intentions or opening up to a brand new beginning. Again, it's new moon around Virgo things, right? So helping, healing, being of service, making things better, right? Again, what is really helping? What is really useful? what really are my tools and what are my talents, right? What are the things that actually help me either build or bring out the things that are most important, and versus what are the things that are not? I just sort of keep myself busy with them, but they actually keep me away from the important things. Yeah. So the last Mercury retrograde for the year will be November 9th. Mercury will turn retrograde in Sagittarius at that time. It will be retrograde until November 29th. It will dip back into Scorpio during this time. So again, this is sort of, all the Mercury retrogrades in 2025 at least begin, if they don't fully stay, in fire signs. So again, this is that sort of last check-in point for the year with that fiery energy. How can I rethink or repair or reconnect or reconsider or reinvent, maybe? Remember is another Mercury thing. Things about myself. This is more who I really am. This is really what I feel like I'm meant to do. This is how I want to show up. And in Sagittarius, it can be rethinking my beliefs, right? The sort of life philosophy that I buy into. Here's the truth that I've been following for my past 50 years, and all of a sudden I might have a moment of, oh my gosh, something drops into my awareness where I have mental clarity and I can see that's not true for me anymore. Or that's not true in a bigger sort of context. Now, Mercury retrogrades in general, sometimes people come back into our lives. Sometimes there's relationship things or communication things that we are now ready to address that we weren't before. But I think in many ways, there's something about our sense of self, right? Getting this sort of, and with the idea of remembering, right? Everything's already within you. Even when we talk about this evolving or growing or becoming, like for me, it's more of a self-revealing. Because everything already is. You don't need to become something, right? But sometimes we need to unravel or unwind to get to sort of the thing that is there. And Mercury retrograde helps us sort of stop and think and look in different ways, so that all of a sudden, maybe the floor becomes the ceiling, but it's the best thing because all of a sudden, from my new perspective, like if I'm not sitting on my chair here at the floor, but if I'm on the ceiling, I'm going to see all different kinds of things. Right? And that's what this is about, a new perspective. And I think it's kind of beautiful as we get to the end of the year, with that Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius. Sagittarius has to do with the bigger concepts, with the natural laws, right? With our natural self, what really has meaning. And the more that we can connect with that, and then also feel our part in that greater meaning or that greater order, then that helps us know the next move to make. So, I know I never can cover everything, but I hope that gives you a little bit of things to work with at least, or maybe even to get you started and feeling into some of the ways that you might want to be leaning into this energy in 2025. And if you're interested in hanging out with me more, about twice a month, I go live on Instagram when the sun changes signs for the new season, different transits with my friend Ricky Wisniewski. We would love to have you there with us, or you can catch the replay if you're interested, or you can find me on my website at taraall.com. And otherwise, I wish you many blessings and support and care and all the things that you need for this year to really let yourself be you. I feel like in so many ways, like that 9-year, discover more of who you really are and how it's connected with something greater. Because when we each do that, it really helps us have the best self to bring out. And that's the best thing we have to bring to the world. So I am thankful for you, and I'm thankful for my communities. I am grateful to be able to do the work that I do and to be really a part of growing with you and learning with you. So I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, really, truly, for being you and being part of my life, remotely, physically, in any capacity, because you are a blessing. Thank you. Bye.